Yes.
That's it. All right. So here we are. We're going to go to the next Mishnah, Mishnah 13, continuing with sayings that were popularized in the name of Hillel. And we're going to talk here about the importance of Talmud Torah, and may our Torah be a source of merit for us to keep everybody safe. Okay, who's going to read Mishnah 13?
I'll read.
Okay, Carolyn beat you.
But I have the old Siddur Sim Shalom, so I don't know if that's where we are or not.
So we're on the second set of sayings of Hillel. Mishnah 12 says Hillel and Shammai received the tradition from them, and now
okay.
So Mishnah 13 is the next bunch of sayings.
Okay, that's where we are.
Yeah, so we'll have comparative translations. That's good. Go ahead.
This was a favorite teaching of his. He who seeks fame destroys his name. Knowledge not increased is knowledge decreased. One who does not study deserves to die. One who exploits Torah will perish.
Okay, who wants to share a different translation? Bill.
Well, Rabbi Shapiro, of course, has a somewhat different translation. He says, Hillel used to teach, seek after fame and you will lose honor. Cling to knowledge and you will forget wisdom. Cease to learn and you cease to live. Exploit what you know and wisdom will evade you.
Okay. And anybody else have another version that they think could help us out? Go ahead, Sarita and then Craig.
I think Craig and I might.
Sarita's the same as mine, so go ahead.
Yeah.
So you want to do it in unison?
He used to say, a name made great is a name destroyed. He who does not increase his knowledge decreases it. And he who does not study deserves to die. And he who makes a worldly use of the crown of the Torah shall pass away.
Okay. So we've got a whole bunch of translations here, each one with a slightly different nuance, perhaps. The first thing that I want to say is the very first phrase that introduces our Mishnah, we had two very interesting ways of translating it, right? The simple translation, the literal translation of Hu Haya Omer is he used to say, right? He would say. But the first translation we had from Geraldine, can you repeat that one?
Yes. He who seeks fame.
No. The very beginning of the Mishnah.
Oh, this was a favorite teaching of his.
Okay, so that's what I want to just dwell on for a half a second. Why did he used to say this? The literal translation is he used to say this. The translation that Geraldine reads to us asks a question and answers it in the translation, right? There's an implicit question of why did he used to keep on saying this? Or they understand he used to say this, he used to say it, and he said it again, and he said it again, and he said it again. So we should just understand the oral reality of this, right? We have it written down here, we have it recorded. And then the back story of how that gets to be recorded, was it simply because somebody heard it and said, wow, that's really noteworthy, I'm going to put that in my notes. And then it just was here that he used to say this, or he would say this, or he said this all the time. Every time we have Thanksgiving dinner together, Uncle so-and-so and so-and-so, they always say, oh, the turkey needs a little extra salt or something like that, So we all have come across that kind of, image of somebody who's known for always saying these things. Sometimes it's annoying, sometimes it's very endearing, sometimes it's annoying until they're not around anymore, and then we say, oh wow, how I miss hearing that thing that used to drive me bonkers when I used to hear it. The background here is trying to imagine This is an imaginative exercise. There is no proof one way or the other. You know, what was Hillel's practice? Was this something that, you know, that he just kept on imploring people, kept on saying it to people, you know, felt that it was really important? He loved to say it. He really, you know, sometimes I like puns. So sometimes people that come up with some things, they enjoy the fact that they came up with it. And that's why they say it again. They, you know, they get that little extra enjoyment. Wow, I just discovered this very pleasurable way of putting things. We have a little bit of another piece of information before we get into the content of what he said. That again, it doesn't prove one thing or another, but it's of note for us to when we see this text compared to the text that we've had until now. What's special about this text? Without even getting into what it means. Yeah, Sarita.
There's four. There's four things instead of three.
Okay, good. So that's also good. Yeah, that's a structural difference. Good. But even before we can count up to four for this, it's not in Hebrew.
It's in Aramaic. Yep.
It's in Aramaic. Until now, all of our teachings have been in pure, beautiful, rabbinic, Mishnaic Hebrew, which is considered by you know, students of the Hebrew language to be one of the pinnacles of the development of Hebrew. It's not the same as biblical Hebrew. It's simpler, it's more direct, it's more concise, and it's not simply because it had to be written down. And later on, it became a model for how to write a pure, good Hebrew. So the Hebrew of the Mishnah is a literary achievement of first rank. And here we have, all of a sudden, breaking into that text. And then we're going to go back to Hebrew. The next Mishnah 14 is going to be Hebrew, and 15, etc. There'll be only a couple of Mishnayot in Pirkei Avot that are going to be reporting Aramaic sayings. And most of the time, 99% of the time, the whole Mishnah is Hebrew. So what gives with the Aramaic? Yes, Jen.
I'm guessing that in that time they spoke day-to-day Aramaic much more than Hebrew.
Right.
So it's maybe a more direct quote from him.
Yeah. So Aramaic was the English of the time. Here we have a Hebrew text that we're going to study. We have Hebrew prayers that we recite, or we try to recite them as much as we can in Hebrew. But then we explain it, we talk about it, we translate it, and we're always going into the English, right? In Europe, you know, in Northern Europe, all the Jews spoke, you know, well, not all the Jews, but in different communities, everybody, they didn't speak Hebrew to each other, they spoke Yiddish. So, you know, in down in the Balkans, Ladino. You know, in other places in the Mediterranean basin, Judeo-Arabic. So there were all kinds of other vernaculars, right? The common language that people used. And here we have a written text of a verbal performance, right? This is actually what we would imagine Hillel actually really saying, as opposed to the first saying, which he probably or very well could have said in Aramaic, but then in the composition of the Mishnah, it was translated into a pure Hebrew. So, so also something for us to understand that the whole Mishnah, therefore, in some sense, is a work of translation, right? Our assumption is that the back and forth, which in rabbinic culture is called the shakla v'tarya, which is Aramaic, not Hebrew. The back and forth, the give and take of argument, give and take of discussion, was most probably in the study hall, even in the land of Israel, and forget about Babylonia, it was in Aramaic. There were local dialects. The Aramaic in Hebrew in Israel wasn't quite the same Aramaic as the Aramaic in Babylonia, just like the Yiddish in Galicia was not the same as the Yiddish of Lithuania. But it was still the basic same thing. And here what we have is a little window, just for a moment, we're actually penetrating past the translation into a you are there moment. So in this particular case, this really is what Hillel said. This is, very, very, presumably, with good reason, we can presume this is exactly the word. These are the words that Hillel said. He used to say exactly this. So what do we have here? We have 4 steps to this, as Sarita pointed out, not 3. So I'm going to read it to you in Hebrew, in the original, in the Aramaic, because there's also a sound quality to these statements that's lost in the translation. Negad Shema, Avad Shemei. Right? So we've got, a kind of a rhythm, ba pa pa, ba pa pa, ba pa pa, ba pa pa, like that. And of course, we have a repetition, right? Nigad Shema, Avad Shemei. The shame is there, the name, sometimes translated reputation, but in the Aramaic, it's the same root word, the shame. We have that in Hebrew as well. A name is a shame. And making a name for oneself is to have a reputation. Then we have Udla Mosif Yasef. So there we have again a literary, sound connection, right? Udla Mosif Yasef, right? And then we keep on going to Udlo Yalef Kitala Chayav. That doesn't have that same kind of bouncy rhythm. And it's actually, the beginning of the real dark stuff, right? If you don't study, then you're liable for death. Udishtamesh betaga chalav. So we start with this bouncy, internal kind of rhyming quality, and then we get into the darker and more ponderous way of saying things, that a heavier warning, a heavier lesson for people to take to take in mind. Okay, and now let's get to the content a little bit. So what's the first one telling us? Yeah, John.
Sort of like pride goeth before a fall, right? Like someone who wants to make their name great causes their name to be not great.
So pride goeth before the fall could be understood also as you'll make some terrible mistake and then you'll step in it real bad and you'll fail to do what you thought you were going to do. But here that it's a little tighter, and what it says is you're going to try to aggrandize your name. You're going to try to make your name greater. You will bring humiliation upon your name. You will not be remembered as the great that you think, right? That you wanted to be.
So it reminds me a little bit of like the prayer that says famous people will disappear, or what is that? They'll be like nothing, and everybody.
Well, it's not like they will be not nothing, right? So I think what you're thinking of is the very early prayer that we say in the morning after the first blessings, and right. We say, what are we? What are we? Let's be honest. What are we really? We're really nothing. Wise people, really, their wisdom is worth nothing, and famous people are really nothing. So, but that's really just in like this perspective that all of human striving from some, cosmic perspective is really futile and really not important. Here he's talking about it within the social realm, right? You think you're going to become famous and admired. Guess what? People will laugh at you or despise you or whatever. Yeah, Sarita.
So it seems that.
Couldn't you see that I was looking at you like that's
right?
It's still the old reality. The old reality. Yeah.
So it's a cautionary thing that just sort of be careful, because the things that you have to do or that you might do so that to make yourself famous could actually be things that are not good or not honorable. And so you'll become famous. In fact, you won't be unknown. You will be famous, but you'll be famous in a way that you didn't want to be, because you'll be
The word-
infamous, right?
Infamous, right.
Thank you.
So that's right. Thank you. Are you registered for this course?
No.
Right. So, okay, good. Yeah. Yeah. So, and what kind of consequence is that? It's a poetic justice consequence, right? It's a midah keneged midah, right? You're seeking fame, you're seeking respect from everybody, you're seeking people to look up at you. The very things that you're doing to try to get that is going to make you actually have people look down at you, and people despise you and not respect you. So exactly what you thought you wanted to get, you're gonna suffer the exact opposite. Josie.
It implies all the compromises you'll have to make to become famous.
So that's a nice way of thinking of it. You're being gentle. I was thinking more about ruthlessness. So I mean, but you're right also. I mean, the thing, it could be anything. What we're talking about here is not so much what you're doing, but why you're doing it. Why are you doing it? You're doing it just to become famous. So that's not the reason to do it, right? You know, I figured out a stimulus package that will save every single person in the United States. I'm doing it so that people will admire me and make me, called the greatest American president ever. So bad about that? Is that really bad? Jen?
No, that's pretty much LBJ, right? In the Great Society right there.
Yeah, so we have to take this with a little grain of salt, right? It depends actually on what kinds of things you're doing in order to become famous, right? And I think that comes back to what Josie was saying, and you know, we're talking about stuff that you're going to do, not good stuff. Do good stuff. We've talked about this many, many times in the past. If you do good stuff, even if your motivation isn't pure, you know what? If you're helping somebody, if the person is helped, we'll take it, right? But we're talking about here things that are going to be questionable at best and bad in many ways, because the good that you're pursuing is only your own fame and notoriety or reputation.
Sounds familiar somehow.
Well, I don't know. Do you have a specific example in mind?
Yes, our president. I mean, this whole question of the election, the whole delegitimization has nothing to do with the country. It has nothing to do with people's well-being. It's about ego. It's about not being the loser.
So when he remember 4 years ago, can we remember that far back? Remember when he claimed that his inauguration crowd was the biggest crowd that ever happened? That was about him trying to say, I am so admired. I am so beloved. I am so, looked up to. And then when the photos show what a falsehood that was, then it becomes an embarrassment, right? Then it just becomes like, at least for some people, for the Hillelites among us, it became an embarrassment. All right, let's keep going. All right, Udala Mosif Yasef. That's the second phrase. And let's review the translations again. Sherilyn, where are you? You there?
Yep.
Please, one more time. Second phrase, after the reputation.
Knowledge not increased is knowledge decreased.
Okay. And we have Rabbi Shapiro's translation is?
It's quite different. It's quite subtly different. Cling to knowledge and you will forget wisdom.
Okay. So, and what was our third one?
It really means the same thing as what Geraldine read. He who does not increase his knowledge decreases it.
Okay. So let me, right. the word that's used here, the lo mosif, mosif means to add, right? Like musaf. Musaf is the additional amida that we add on Shabbat and holidays and special occasions. So that's mosif, right? Mosif, to add. But then the word that's used, that we have these different yasef, which is supposed to ring with mosif. So lo mosif, yasef. If you're not adding, then yasef. And the word yasef is an interesting word because it can go both ways. It could be also related to the word to add. Yosef, right? Yosef, Joseph, is Yosef, to add. To add blessing, to add goodness. But Yasef could also come from the word sof, which means end, cessation, finished, right? So maybe a more literal translation would be, if you don't add, then you're gonna just stop it. You're gonna end it, right? Now notice that we have here wisdom, understanding, and all that stuff. That's all in brackets. He doesn't say what you're supposed to be adding. He says if you do not add, and he doesn't say what you should be adding in the original, then you'll just be concluding it. You'll be bringing it to an end. Sarita.
So I'm just thinking that sometimes you know something and it's a good something to know, but 5 years later, it might not be relevant anymore. It might not be true anymore because the whole context and facts on the other facts may have changed. And so if you don't keep current, then the beliefs and even the facts that you knew maybe become irrelevant and maybe no longer true.
Right. So important in the medical profession, for instance, right? Where if you're still using whatever they used, 5 fingers. Like what you want to say?
Yeah.
I'm sure that Craig had the same experience as I did the first week of medical school. We got a lecture that went something like, half of what we're going to teach you here is wrong. We just don't know which half.
Right. And
I teach that to my students also. I mean, I tell them that if you think you're going to do the same thing when, 10 years after you graduate from what you're doing now, then you're not doing the right stuff anymore. Yeah.
Right. And the other half that's right is going to be wrong in 5 years anyway. So, yeah. Craig, did you want to add anything to that? No. Okay. So Geraldine, yeah.
Well, just my family are research scientists and doctors. And that's why an experiment has to be repeated over and over again before it's accepted for publication.
Right. You want to say that
and
in
the proof
response to
has
last week as well. Yes, go ahead.
And the proof has to be there. And if it's not there, even if it's there, 2 years from now, it might come out with a different result.
Right. So you have to constantly recheck it and recheck it and recheck it.
Yeah.
So even if it's not adding new wisdom, it's just keeping on looking at it, keeping on paying attention to it. Craig, yeah.
Yeah, I will just add to what Lou said earlier also, that in order for to maintain our medical licenses, we have to do a certain number of continuing medical education credits every year.
Right.
Keep up.
Is it mandatory for lawyers also? I know lawyers do. Yes, it is. Adam is nodding his head. Okay, yeah. So you've got continuing education. Yes, Geraldine.
Teaching profession also, we had to do 500 hours of renewed work as well every year.
Wow. That's more than an hour a day. That's a lot.
That was in the state of New Jersey. I don't know if it's every place else.
Wow. Josie, yes.
Less philosophical, look at all the changes in the advice to parents.
Right.
1 year it's
Right.
do this, the next
Right.
year it's don't do that. And
Dr. Spock
them on
is
their
the
stomachs, put
Bible
them
for
on
a
their
while,
back.
and then somebody else comes in. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
depends who's speaking.
Look at all the advice we're being given about the pandemic, from one week to the next. Yeah,
But
Geraldine, back to you.
Because it's science. That's why.
Right.
It's not that it was wrong the first time, it's that
Right.
that's what came out.
We're doing our best again and again and again as we're assessing it.
Right.
So let me ask, we have just a couple of more minutes. Is there any link between the first phrase, the first clause that he said and the second clause? I mean, I see people who are pondering this, so that means that it's not obvious. One thing is about reputation. The other thing is about studying, wisdom, being attentive to new facts and new knowledge. Sarita.
I guess it's really this view about sort of how things change, that you sort of can't, that don't expect that things are going to be static, because things do change. And I mean, the same is true for your own personal fame, what people think of you, what they know about you, and it's also true for sort of the knowledge base. It also might suggest that someone who is just sort of trying to self-aggrandize might be the kind of person who is so focused on that they're not sort of looking out and being knowledgeable about what's going on out except for themselves, that they're so self-focused that they're not focused on in continually increasing their knowledge. They expect that, oh, once everybody knows me and I'm great, I don't have to do anything else.
Right. I think that that's an important part of this. I think if we use the self as the lens for all of these, we have warnings here from Hillel about how one deals with one's own self, one's own identity, one's own evaluation of oneself. And he has a warning at the beginning. Look, don't be so self-obsessed, so ambitious, so focused that it's all about me. I'm going to try to do this. You are going to fall down, and it's not going to. So he's actually appealing to the person's self-regard. Do you want people to despise you and to disrespect you? No. So watch out. That's the first one. The second one, if we take the self as the lens, he's saying you go to school, you get your PhD, you write your book, and then you're the authority. And there's anybody that will question your work, or anyone that will say that I have a new idea, or anyone that says, well, maybe you haven't thought about this or that or the other thing, can often be seen as a threat, as an undermining. Oh, wait a second, this person is not giving my work its complete due. But Hillel says, wait a second, but you're gonna, if you don't keep on learning, if you're not open to continuing to develop your work, you can't simply use your work as the pedestal to stand on. It's not a finished work. Yeah.
So people say this in my field, and I'm sure it's also true of other fields, that the best theories are falsifiable. That is, they can be investigated, and then they lead to more questions, and it could be that theory gets overturned, rather than a theory that just says this is the way it is, and you can't even investigate it to see whether or not it is correct.
But the theory is worthwhile for pushing forward the next question.
Right.
All right, we're going to stop here. Yesher Koach. And forward, hopefully next week we're going to, I did it wrong.